Hello, everyone, and welcome. When you look at the business world, you often wonder, what really separates a good company from a truly great one? Well, a huge part of it comes down to a single powerful idea: efficiency. But, and this is important, we're not just talking about blindly cutting costs. We're talking about mastering the art of cost minimization. And today, we're going to pull back the curtain and see exactly how the smartest companies get it done.
Everything we're going to talk about today really boils down to this one question. What is the true cost of producing just one more? It seems so simple, right? But believe me, getting this right can be the difference between a business that thrives and one that struggles. So how do we even begin to find the answer? Well, we're going to tackle it together step by step. First, we're going to get crystal clear on what cost minimization really is. Then, I'm going to introduce you to a secret weapon that economists absolutely love: marginal analysis. From there, we'll zero in on the star of the show, marginal cost, and finally, we'll put all this theory to the test with a real-world business scenario.
It's so easy to hear cost minimization and just think, oh, okay, just spend less money. But that's a trap, a really common one. It's not about taking a hatchet to your budget and just slashing expenses left and right. A much better way to think about it is like a skilled musician tuning their guitar. They're making tiny, precise adjustments to each string to find that perfect harmony, that sweet spot. For a business, that sweet spot is the point where you're producing exactly what you need at the absolute lowest cost possible. That's the target we're aiming for.
So the big question is, how do we find that sweet spot? Well, you need the right tool for the job. And for economists, for savvy business leaders, that tool is called marginal analysis. This is the key that's going to unlock this whole cost minimization puzzle for us. Okay, this idea of thinking at the margin, I promise you, it's a total game changer. It's all about shifting your perspective. Instead of looking at the big, blurry, overall picture, you zoom your focus way in, right down to the impact of your very next move. You start asking these laser-focused questions like, what is the actual cost of making just one more of our product? Or what's the real benefit of putting in one more hour of work? It's this intense focus on the next one that leads to brilliant, efficient decisions. And that thinking brings us right to the heart of our lecture today: marginal cost. And I am not exaggerating when I say this. Truly understanding this concept is what separates the good managers from the great ones. It's the tool that lets you see past a simple and frankly often misleading average cost. It lets you understand what is really happening inside your business from one unit to the next. All right, let's break this down. The formula here, delta TC over delta Q, might look a little bit intimidating at first glance, but it's actually incredibly straightforward. That little triangle is the Greek letter delta, and in math and economics, whenever you see a delta, it just means change in. That's it. So the formula is simply the change in your total cost divided by the change in your quantity, or output. What this gives you is a dynamic, real-time look at your production efficiency. It tells you exactly what it will cost to produce the very next item, and that is so much more powerful than just knowing the average cost over 1,000 units. Okay, let's look at some numbers and see this thing in action. At 0 units produced, let's say our total cost is $100. These are our fixed costs, maybe rent, things we have to pay no matter what. Now, to make that very first unit, our total cost jumps from $100 to $130. So the change, the marginal cost, is $30. Simple enough? But here's where it gets interesting. Look at the second unit. To produce that one, our total cost only goes up from $130 to $150. That's just a $20 increase. So the marginal cost of the second unit was only $20. And the third? Even cheaper, at just $15. What we're seeing here is a sign of growing efficiency. This is what economists call economies of scale. Maybe we're getting better at the process, or we're using our materials more efficiently. All right, so that's the theory. Now let's put it into practice where it really matters. I want you to imagine for a moment that you are the production manager at a small, custom t-shirt company. The decisions you make are going to directly impact the company's profits. Let's see how you can use this tool to make a really smart call. So here's the deal. Your job is to look at the production numbers and figure out the absolute best, most efficient number of shirts to print in a single batch. The goal is simple. Find that production sweet spot that gives you the most bang for your buck by minimizing your cost per shirt.
Now this data right here tells a really fascinating story. Let's focus on that marginal cost column. To go from printing 10 shirts to 20, each of those 10 additional shirts cost you $5. Not bad. But then, to go from 20 to 30, the cost drops to just $3 per shirt. And then from 30 to 40, it hits rock bottom at only $2. This is those economies of scale we talked about kicking in beautifully. Maybe you're getting a bulk discount on ink, or your printing press is just running at its most efficient speed. But then, look what happens next. To get to 50 shirts, the cost per shirt suddenly jumps back up to $4, and to get to 60, it's $6. This is the law of diminishing returns hitting us. Maybe the machine starts to overheat and needs a break, or you have to pay an employee overtime to manage the larger batch. Your efficiency is actually going down.
So you're the manager. This data is sitting on your desk. What's the call? Where's your production sweet spot? I want you to really zoom in on that marginal cost column. Where's this operation running at its absolute peak performance?
And there you have it. The answer is 40 shirts. Now, why? It's not just because $2 is the lowest number on the chart. It's because that is the precise point where the cost to produce the next shirt is at its absolute minimum. If you try to make even one more batch of 10, your costs per shirt start to creep back up. 40 units, that is your point of peak efficiency, plain and simple.
Now, this case study perfectly illustrates a very common mistake that I see students and even experienced managers make all the time. It's called the average cost fallacy. Let's look at the numbers. At 40 shirts, your total cost is $300, which means your average cost is $7.50 per shirt. Okay, but look at 60 shirts. Your total cost is $400, so your average cost is about $6.67 per shirt. An untrained manager might see that lower average cost and think, wow, producing 60 is better, our average is lower. But we know better, don't we? We know that those last 20 shirts were actually incredibly inefficient to make, costing us $4 and then $6 each. Focusing only on the average completely masks this growing inefficiency and can trick you into overproducing, which actually hurts your bottom line.
So, let's pull this all together. What are the big, crucial takeaways here for you as future managers and business leaders? Because this isn't just some abstract theory, it's a powerful, practical mindset that you can and should start applying right away.
Okay, here are the key habits I want you to build. First, and most importantly, get obsessed with the cost of the next one, not the overall average. Second, always remember that your lowest marginal cost is your North Star. It's the beacon that points to your peak operational efficiency. Third, let the data guide you, not just gut feelings. And finally, don't just do this once. Use marginal analysis as a regular checkup for your business to stay sharp and stay ahead.
If you only take one single thing away from our discussion today, please let it be this. This question right here embodies the entire philosophy we've been talking about. It is the essential, critical question that drives smart, profitable, and truly efficient business leadership. It's the question that should be echoing in your mind with every single operational decision you make.
And that leads me to one final thought to leave you with. We've spent all our time today focused on the cost side of the business equation, but this powerful way of thinking, it applies everywhere. So my question to you is, how would you take this same marginal logic and apply it to analyze the marginal benefit, the additional revenue you get from selling one more unit, or launching one new marketing campaign, or even hiring one new employee? That is the next step in becoming a truly strategic decision maker.